Hello, I'm Brigham Avery, and welcome to Hollywood and Ivy, where Sunset Boulevard meets Addison and Clark. The show where we get to know celebrity Cub fans from the entertainment world as we take you from Wrigley Field to the red carpet. Today's guest is as accomplished, talented, and diverse as Tinkers to Evers to Chance. He's worn the hats of a lieutenant, an astronaut, a director, a musician, and lifelong Cub fan. Founder of the Steppenwolf Theater, Academy Award nominated, and champion of veteran causes, he is Chicago native Gary Sinise. And welcome, Gary Sinise, to Hollywood and Ivy. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Gary, you were born on St. Patrick's Day, yet you're Italian. You're born on the South Side, yet you're a Cubs fan. Please explain.
I grew up very confused.
Yeah.
I remember, my mom, she was considered naming me Patrick Sinise, but then they went to Gary for some reason. I can't remember what it was, but wanted to name me Patrick because I was born on St. Patrick's Day. I grew up with shamrocks and green cakes and couldn't get away from that for years and years, decades, in fact. And then with regards to the Cubs, yeah, I was on the South Side, but WGN was on television. So I watched the Cubs as a kid. You know, I remember 5 years old sitting in front of the black and white TV just watching the Cubs. So I became a Cub fan, you know, by watching television.
At what moment did you know that you were a fan of the Chicago Cubs? Specifically, is there a moment?
They were the first baseball team I really watched. And, you know, Jack Brickhouse and Hey Hey, and, you know, I mean, I grew to love the Cubs as a young kid, and then I wanted, you know, of course, as I got a little bit older, I started playing Little League and all of that, so I wanted to pretend I was a Cub, and, you know.
Gary, where were you in 2016 when the curse is broken? The Cubs won the series in Cleveland, Ohio. Where were you at that moment?
I was at home here, watching on television, of course. And, great series, great series. And, you know, you could just feel it. Every Cub fan in the world was tuning in to that series and watching, you know, great, I mean, the way it ended with the rain delay and everything like that was just, I mean, for me, I go back to the '69 team, and because I was young then.
Oh, yeah.
I was young and really tuned into the Cubs, and that was the first time that we had really seen them, you know, that I had seen them go that far. Yeah, be successful, go that far. Very disappointing, obviously. But, you know, we always had that hope, and we had that hope in '84, and we had that hope along the way. And then that team, you know, this World Series team really felt like it was just going to happen. You know, you felt it was going to happen.
Gary, the first time you saw Wrigley Field live in person, you felt fill in the blank.
Young kid walking into that stadium for the first time, it was overwhelming. And then when the players were on the field and you're down there, I ran down. I think we were up above. I tried to sneak down there to get close to the players, and my gosh, it's magical. And every time I walk in there, you know, it feels the same. I mean, it's just such a special spot, especially for people that grew up watching the Cubs, you know. And I'm glad they've done all the improvements for the team, because it was, you know, I mean, it was getting old, the ballpark. But I'm glad they, you know, Wrigley is such a special spot. And so many of the old ballparks are gone, you know, because they built these new stadiums and everything. But it's so special that that ballpark in that neighborhood
has stayed there since 1914.
It represents, you know, over 100 years of baseball history.
As a young man in 1969 or 1984, did you go party in the bleachers?
No. So '69, what was I? I was 14 in 1969. So no. I think I was in the upper deck when I went to see games, usually back then. But you know, young kid going with dad, going with uncles, going with family to see the ball game. That was special. I you know, watched many more games on television than actually able to get into the city, because I lived outside the city. You know, for the first 9 years, I lived in Harvey and Blue Island,
Right.
that area. And then we moved up north to the northern suburbs, about 25 miles north of Chicago to Highland Park. So getting down to the ballpark was not something that I could do, you know, easily. So I watched far more games listening to Brick House on WGN.
Who would make a better leading man, Gary? Chris Bryant or Ryan Sandberg?
Why would you ask me that?
You're an actor. You're a director.
Yeah. Well, they're both handsome dudes. You know, got that movie star look. Yeah. Both excellent players, of course. You know, great personalities. Yeah, I think it's a toss-up.
Okay. Yeah. They could be like together. They could be next door neighbors. They could be a detective crime-fighting duo.
Well, father and son.
Yeah. Absolutely. Tell me, and I'm going to go through an era of teams, your favorite player from these individual Cub teams, Gary. 1969, who was your favorite player?
Well, I'm a big Ron Santo fan, you know.
Number 10.
Yeah. I mean, Ron Santo kind of was my all-time favorite for years. I mean, once you got this favorite player, it's hard to replace that player. I wanted to be like Ron Santo. I wanted to be I played third base in Little League and everything. I just wanted to be like Ron Santo all the time. And then when I got to meet Ron Santo, you know, for the first time up in the booth when he was doing the broadcasting for radio, oh my gosh, that was
very special.
You know, he was kind of gaga over me for the movie stuff, and you know.
And you were gaga over him from all the nostalgic moments
I'm just
as a
drooling
kid.
over Ron Santo because
I'm
meeting one of my all-time baseball heroes. My gosh, marvelous, wonderful memory of that. You know, it supersedes any team or anything like that because he was on the team when I was discovering baseball as a kid and really just falling in love with the Cubs. And you know, I mean that 69 team had so many players that you know, Billy Williams and Jenkins and Ernie
Four
Banks.
Hall of Famers.
Ernie Banks, yeah. I mean, yeah, just Beckert and Kessinger. I mean, it just was a magnificent team and something I'll always remember. You know, not as familiar with the newer teams as I am those older teams because they you know, when something is new to you and you're just discovering it makes an impression that is lasting. It's like when I first discovered acting in high school. Same kind of feeling. You know, when I first discovered baseball, and it was through the Cubs, and it was through those teams. Yeah, you fall in love, and you're everything is new. And when I first discovered acting, it was kind of this same thing. I discovered it in high school, in a high school play. And,
wow.
And I had never done a play before or anything like that. We went through all the rehearsals and the performance. Right. And when it was over, I was just heartbroken that it was over.
Yeah.
And just wanted to do it again and again and again. So people will always ask me, you know, they'll ask me about my favorite ball player or something like that. It's always
Ron
right
Santo.
there. They'll ask me about, you know, some of my favorite moments as an actor, what I did as an actor. And among all the top moments, I go back to having two little lines in the first play I ever did and how special that was to me.
And what was that play?
Know? It was West Side Story.
Oh my!
The musical.
What were your lines in that version of West Side Story?
I think I had a couple of words.
Oh, wow.
I don't even have lines, you know. And I think I said knives. That was my word.
Yes.
Knives. You know, and I was, you know, like 16 or whatever. But that was such a magnificent. In fact, yesterday I had lunch with the guy who played Bernardo in that production.
Wow.
And I haven't seen him in a long time. His name's Jeff Malvoin. He's in the business out here.
Right.
You know, he's a showrunner, producer for television and everything. He played Bernardo in the show.
Goodness.
And I think I write about him a little bit in my book as well, about that moment and what that was like. So there was this kind of combination of wanting to play baseball,
Right.
you know, when I was a kid, wanting to be Ron Santo, and then falling in love with theater and getting involved in that. And then I was also playing music. So I you know, at a certain point, baseball got left behind.
Yeah.
The sports got left behind, and I went into music and theater and kind of did that whole thing.
So Gary, tell me about 2003. You were actually there at the game live for the Bartman event.
Yes, I was. That was something. So I'm sitting kind of up here, and he was right down, you know.
Oh, wow.
Right down here.
So you were looking down on that whole event.
I saw the whole event. I was there for that, and I felt so bad for him.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody was freaking out because we want the game, right?
Right.
And everything like that. But then the crowd starts to turn on this poor guy. Had to walk him out, you know, with security around him and everything, and you know, when you look at it, when you think about it, I mean, if a foul ball is coming and you're tracking the foul ball, your eyes are up, right, and you're looking like this, and if it's coming to you, you're kind of going like
It's a human reaction.
Yeah. So he was just he wasn't paying attention.
Right.
What
What
Alu was doing down there coming.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like.
I know. And it's amazing how an act as innocent as that just talks about how precious momentum is. But you felt, and I watched on TV, you felt the momentum going out of Wrigley Field after that happened.
Oh, it got deflated.
Mark Pryor was absolutely dealing. They're up 3-0, 8th inning, 5 outs to go, and then just complete deflation. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, they had opportunities after that play to finish it, and it was like. There was all of a sudden it started raining. You know?
Right.
I mean, it's like you know, the weather got bad.
Right,
or something.
right.
I mean, and it wasn't going to get better.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
It was another.
Right.
You just kind of go, well, what's up?
You told me where you were during 2016. Did you have a favorite player from that? Rizzo, Bryant, from that specific team?
I love that whole team.
Top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that infield was just these young guys.
Oh, yeah,
just
with
playing
Bryant and Rizzo and Baez.
Just so beautifully together.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that was, you know, I mean, that was a fun series, actually, the World Series. It was a fun series to watch because both teams played well, and you know, it was a fun series to watch. But it did for Cubs fans. I think it just felt, you know, you always had this concern maybe that you know, is something going to happen?
Right. Not until the final out.
Yeah,
I'll believe it when I see it.
That's right. That we've seen before, you know, but it just kept feeling that it was different, and you know. But we felt that before, so everybody was just reserving their, you know, their excitement for the moment that it was finished, and we could all let it go. And, you know, I'm sure every Cub fan you have on here, you know, that goes back, you know, to all those different teams and everything, says the same thing about it, you know.
How special is it for you to go now as a celebrity to Wrigley Field and see how you're embraced by everybody, and you get to go be with your people, but you're special, so you're kind of a player, but in a different way? The celebrity.
Well, you know, normally, because I don't live in Chicago anymore, it's you know, it's almost a special trip. I'm going to be in Chicago. The Cubs are playing. I mean, it's different the last couple of years with COVID and everything. But prior to that, you know, every year you know, for many years, I'd be in Chicago for, you know, a period of time in the summer. Maybe it was only 1 or 2 days, but I'd try to make sure it was at a time where Cubs were playing, and maybe they want me to come over to the ballpark and sing the tune.
Do you try to channel an artist and imitate maybe your inner Ditka for that, or is it just, we got some footage of you singing, it's very, very passionate.
Oh, well, I've enjoyed doing that many times. And always wear number 10 for Ron. I mean, every time I've done it, they've asked me what number you want, and I say number 10. And to stand up there and sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" in front of all those fans and just try to, you know, you try to just sort of inhabit Harry Carey, you know, when you do it. That's what I think about.
Yes.
I think about Harry being up there and the number of times that I watched him do it. And I just want to try to do it for Harry
Yes,
Carey,
yes.
you know, and to recreate it as much as you can for the fans. And it's so much fun to do that and to be a part of that.
We talked about Mike Ditka's appearance in 2003 singing.
Classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He get under 30 seconds, I think, right?
Classic.
Yes.
He ran
Classic
up those
Ditka,
stairs.
right.
He was going to be late, and he just wanted to speed through the song.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he was 1, 2, 3.
Take me out of the ball game.
Very good.
It was, you know, classic
Ditka.
moment. Yeah,
Right.
Classic Ditka. Yeah.
Did you ever get to go to spring training for your birthday? Because it's St. Patrick's Day, and that's right around when the Cubs are in spring training. So I don't know if you
I went to spring training once. Yeah,
Nice.
in Arizona. Yeah, I went there, took the family there, hung out, went backstage. Sandberg was there, you know. But it's so much fun, you know, being in Arizona at that
Isn't
time.
it the best?
I mean, there's so many teams down there, and it was so much fun to just be there.
This is Hollywood and Ivy. We're visiting with Gary Sinise. Stick around, more fun after this. Gary, it's the early 70s in Chicago. You're a very young man, and you created something called the Steppenwolf Theater, an amazing accomplishment. Talk about how that came to be.
Yeah, well, as I had mentioned, the first play I did was West Side Story, and I did it kind of by accident because I was playing in a band in high school, and you know, this is the '70s, so this goes back to '71, and I wasn't dressing real good, you know, kind of scruffy looking, and the drama teacher walked by and turned around and said, "You look like a gang member. Come and audition." For the play."
Wow.
And then she blew off down the hallway, and I, you know, I didn't think much of it. But after school, when the audition was, I kind of had a curiosity, so I went to see what was going on. All the pretty girls were walking in there and everything. I didn't know what an audition was, but I just followed them in. Sat down, and they you know, said, "Sign this thing," you know. And I signed it, and it was like the sign-up list. And then they called my name and handed me a script and said, "Get up there and do it." And I said, "Okay." You know, I didn't know what to do. I was stumbling through it, and I was kind of getting some laughs. I mean, because it was so stupid and so bad. So people were laughing, and I was laughing. I wasn't taking it very seriously. But the next day, when they post the cast list, I went to see if my name was on there. My name was on there. I got a little part, and it changed my life. All I wanted to do from that point on was theater and acting. And so I tried to get in every single play I could. I got in a lot of them. Did real well as an actor in high school. And it turned my life around, really, because I was struggling academically as a kid. I just wasn't doing well in school at all. But all of a sudden, I found this thing that I could do, and I was good at it, and I liked it. And then when I graduated from high school, I just pulled together with some kids, and we found this little church space, and they let us use the space to put on a play. And we went in there, and we were 18 years old, and we called it Steppenwolf Theater, and we put on a play. Then we did another one, and then we did another one, and then we eventually took up residence in the basement of a closed-down Catholic school in Highland Park. It had a big basement, and I went to the priest and said, "Would you let us use the basement to put on plays?"
Right.
And they said, "Sure." And so we went in there. We built an 88-seat theater in there in 1976. We added Malkovich, Laurie Metcalf, Joan Allen. We were just kids, you know, we were all kids. And we did really well, and we eventually moved into the city of Chicago in 1980. And in 1982, we took one of our plays to New York. Me and Malkovich went to do a play called True West, and it got a lot of attention. You know, New York Times, all these articles written about it and everything like that. Malkovich went off to do movies, and the theater, Steppenwolf Theater, just became kind of a more nationally recognized theater. It was, who are these guys from Chicago and what are they doing there? Because they're really good, and, you know.
Yeah. You
I
just
mean,
laid that foundation in the church basement and.
Oh,
and,
back in back in the little church
Yeah.
days when we were 18, and now the theater is a gigantic building. I mean,
Yeah.
it started with kids with no money, nothing, absolutely. And when you go there, at North and Halstead,
Yes.
you see this giant theater, and it started with just 18-year-old kids who had absolutely nothing but a desire and a passion to put on plays. I met the woman who would become my wife. She was.
Oh, wow.
She went to school with Malkovich and Terry Kinney and Jeff Perry and the people in the original company. Her name's Moira Harris, and we fell in love.
Wonderful.
We got married about 5 years after we started the theater, and she's just wonderful. And she was acted in plays for a long time. Doesn't do it anymore, but a lot of great things happened out of that, and I discovered something that I could make a living at in the movies and in the television business, and it all goes back to those 18-year-old kids, and even earlier when I just first discovered acting in high school.
Gary, you just mentioned movies. Is there a favorite Chicago movie that you have, like the Blues Brothers or perhaps Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Risky Business?
Well, Risky Business, yeah, probably one of my favorites. I actually auditioned for Risky Business.
Oh, you did?
I remember, yeah. I auditioned
Talk about that.
Yeah, no, I remember coming in, whatever year that was.
83.
83, okay, so I was still living in Chicago at that time. Steppenwolf we'd taken our first play to New York. It did really well. I came home and I was able to get some auditions when I came back to Chicago, and Risky Business was one of them. And I remember coming in and talking about this play we'd just done in New York and everything. And I was auditioning for the Tom Cruise part.
Oh my gosh, that's what I was getting at. Is who are you auditioning for? Tom Cruise or one of his friends?
They were seeing
Joel.
They were seeing a lot of
Joel Goodson.
They were seeing a lot of young guys from Chicago.
Wow. Holy cow.
But the Cruise did all right.
Yeah, he sure did.
He did all right.
He sure did. Yeah. Whatever happened to him?
It was geez.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Haven't the slightest.
Yeah.
So in 1992, you and Malkovich star in Of Mice and Men. You starred in and directed that. What was that experience like for you?
Well, John and I actually did it together on stage first about 11 years before I made the movie of it. So, yeah, it was probably about 81, and we did the play on stage in Chicago.
Okay.
And I always loved it. I remember when I first discovered acting in high school, all I wanted to do was be in drama classes and audition for plays. So I was in the drama classes, and our teacher, who was this wonderful teacher named Barbara Patterson, she put a field trip together for a bunch of students to go by bus from Highland Park up to Minneapolis for a few days and see a bunch of plays at the Guthrie Theater, big theater there. And we saw 3 plays in like 2 days. And one of them was Of Mice and Men, and I didn't know anything about Steinbeck at that time. And I remember seeing that show. I'm a 16-year-old kid just discovering acting, and all I wanted to do was act, and I watched that, and it's so moving, you know. And
the emotions.
The emotions are very powerful, and when the ending happens with George and Lenny, and it's very dramatic and very powerful. I remember just weeping. Everybody in our class was there, sobbing at the end.
Right.
And I just knew that's what I want to do. I want to move people like that. So I fell in love with Steinbeck at that time. So flash forward to 1981 or so, and we did the play on stage at Steppenwolf.
Yeah.
And then I moved to California. I directed a movie called Miles from Home with Richard Gere.
Okay.
And Kevin Anderson, who was a member of Steppenwolf. In fact, there's about 6 or 7 members of Steppenwolf in that movie.
Oh, wow.
I cast a whole bunch of people.
It's an alumni showcase.
It was, pretty much, yeah. Richard Gere and Kevin Anderson play brothers.
Oh, wow.
And And then, you know, I did okay. It was pretty good, not great, but I learned a lot of good stuff. And then I left that, and we went to do a theater version of The Grapes of Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to get the rights from Elaine Steinbeck.
Oh, wow.
Who was married to John Steinbeck when he was alive, and she controlled the rights. So she gave us the rights to do that, and I got to be very good friends with her during the production of The Grapes of Wrath.
How cool is that?
It was wonderful. And I remember standing there with her backstage, just talking, and I said, would you give me the rights to Of Mice and Men?
Oh, wow, that's how that happened?
And she did, yeah.
Holy
She
cow.
said, well, honey, it's already been filmed like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, man.
And I said, I think I could do a good job with it. I loved the story, and she gave me the rights.
Right.
And it was great because she gave me the rights for 1 year. I didn't have to pay her any money. And she said,
That's nice.
you know, basically the agent said, we want to make this possible for you. If you can set this movie up within a year, then we'll talk about it. So I did. I went home from New York where we were doing The Grapes of Wrath, and I came back to California and went to MGM, who I'd had a couple of deals with, and said, would you like to make Of Mice and Men? And they said, yeah. So they paid Elaine, you know, for the rights to the thing, and we hired Horton Foote, a great screenwriter, to write the movie. And I, of course, asked John to do it with me because we had done it already about 11 years before. And we went on, and it was a great, great experience. I still get letters from high school kids that watch that movie because they read the book. And
That's compelling.
yeah.
If they were to do a version, a Cub version of Mice and Men, I was thinking maybe Bobby Jr. and Jody Davis would be Lenny and George. I don't know if you have any thought on that, but, you know, just because Jody was so big and, you know, Bobby Jr.'s kind of, you know, little and scrawny. I don't know if you had a Cub casting for Of Mice and Men.
Schwarber might be a good Lenny.
He'd be great. Yeah, absolutely.
He's a big guy.
That's right. You're watching Hollywood and Ivy, where Sunset Boulevard meets Addison and Clark. We're talking to Gary Sinise. More after this. In 1993, 1994, when you were making Forrest Gump, was there a point when you were making that movie, Gary, where you realized the effect it would have and you realized what you guys were actually creating?
When we were making it?
Yeah, because Tom Hanks is so big. He had just won an Academy Award for Philadelphia. And
you know, I mean, his trajectory was changing a little bit because for a very long time he was kind of associated with nothing but comedy. You know, a lot of comedy.
The Money Pit, Bachelor Party, all those.
Yeah, Bosom Buddies, all
Absolutely.
that stuff. And then A League of Their Own, you know, he's so good in that.
Yeah, he's great in it. He's the best in that.
He's so great in that movie. And things started to turn, I think, a little bit for him. Things started opening up. And then Forrest Gump, you know, he did Philadelphia.
Yeah,
of course,
that was
very
kind of
good in that. And then Forrest Gump came along. And while we were making it, I don't think we did know.
Oh, wow.
You know, what it was going to be like. Because the nature of the way the story is, you have a bunch of separate storylines.
Right.
Like
Going
you
to
have
war.
Sally Field's story, right? Yeah. And then Robin Wright's storyline. Then you have Lieutenant Dan's storyline, Bubba's storyline. And, you know, if you think about it, you know, I did a little bit with Bubba, but mostly my stuff was with Tom, right?
Yeah.
So all that stuff that between Michael T. Williamson, who played Bubba, and Tom Hanks, they were doing kind of on their own, and I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't see it. Same thing with Robin Wright. I was only in one little moment with Robin, and the rest of the time she's working with Tom and doing. So I didn't know what she was shooting. Same thing with Sally. Didn't know what she was shooting. So I remember when so it was hard to predict, like, well, this is going to be great, and you know, because I didn't really know what everybody was doing.
Yeah.
Until we all sat down and they didn't know what we were doing, you know.
Yeah.
Until we all sat down together and watched the movie for the first time, and I remember the lights came up, and we were in this little screening room at Paramount. It was just the key, you know, some of the key cast members,
right.
producers, a few people from the studio.
Robert
that kind of
Zemeckis.
thing. Bob, of course, yeah, the director, and the lights came up, and I remember sitting there and people standing up and turning around, and we were all looking at each other like, whoa.
What have we just done?
This is really good.
Right. So, Gary, from Forrest Gump, you segue directly to Apollo 13 in 1995. That must have been pretty special.
Well, I had a good time with Tom on Forrest Gump, and I think he put in a good word with the director, Ron. But I went and auditioned for Apollo 13. In fact, I found out about it. I got the script. I read it. I thought, what a perfect story for a, true story for a movie. It was very, very well written. And I said, well, what am I auditioning for? And Ron Howard said, told my agent, just tell Gary to come in and pick any one of the astronauts except for the one Tom's going to do. And so I actually read them all, and I picked Ken Mattingly, who doesn't get to go in the spaceship, you know. Because I just thought that storyline of him, you know, being one of the guys who's gonna, you know, really drive the mission and then getting pulled off the mission, which is what happens to him. They think he's might have been exposed to the measles and they don't want to send him up to space. So they say, we're gonna replace you. They pull him off. But then later in the, you know, when everything happens and things go wrong, they need him to come back and help to get the guys home. And I thought that was a great story, you know. You kind of fall from grace and then you're redeemed. And he becomes a big part of getting them back. So I love playing TK Mattingly and auditioned for the part. Glad I got it. And it was a couple of movies in a row with Tom Hanks. So that was really, really fun.
You play a villain in Ransom. How much do you like playing a bad guy? Because you do that very well. Your range is good, because I really didn't like you in Ransom. You're very scary and unlikable. So.
Well, Ron Howard made a really good movie there. So Ransom was the next movie he did after Apollo 13. So I worked with Tom two movies in a row, and then I worked with Ron 2 movies in a row. And I think Ron was sort of, you know, kind of brave to kind of see, you know, kind of consider me to play the villain in that movie. In fact, he wanted me to do it, and I remember when I read it, I had small children at the time.
Right.
You know, it's about a guy who kidnaps somebody.
Jimmy Shaker.
Yeah, Jimmy Shaker, and he was evil. You
Oh,
know,
very much so. And he
bad
looked
guy.
down on people that had wealth and success. He really did.
He was just very, you know, he was kind of a psychopath. and I had trouble seeing myself in the movie. So I actually said, Ron, I don't know, thank you, but I'm not sure I could do it. And then he went on, and then I thought about it. In the back of my mind, I'm like, how could I be saying no to Ron Howard? But it was very difficult for me to picture myself in this villainous kidnapper role.
Yeah.
And here's a true story. I was at a Halloween parade. I think it was a Halloween parade at my kid's school.
Oh, wow.
And Brian Grazer,
yes,
the producer, his children went to the same school. And so we're at the Halloween parade together. And I see Brian, and I'd say, Brian, how you doing? You know, and you know, I had turned down the part.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's good. And then I'm like, is that is that part still
Right.
open? What have you cast it yet?
You
What's,
mean for the
what's going on?"
psychopath, Gary? Is that the part you're talking about?
For the evil
yes,
kidnapper.
Makes it, all the kids can hear him say
He
that?
said, "No, we haven't cast it yet." And
Wow.
so I went home from the parade and I called up my agent. I said, "You know, do you think Ron would reconsider?"
Yeah.
So my agent called right away. The next thing, within 5 minutes, I get
yeah.
a call from Ron.
Yeah.
I've thought about this, Ron, a little bit, and if it's still open and you'd still like me to do it, I'd like to do it. And that was it. And then, I'm working with Mel Gibson, and,
And what was that like?
Then I really just, I got into the villain thing,
Oh, yeah.
and it was a really well-written character,
Yes.
Jimmy Shaker, and Ron just made it so well. I mean, he really, and it was very different for him, too. But, I wasn't looking to play
Right.
villains. I just played T.K. Mattingly and Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah.
And they're
Feeling good about yourself.
they're heroic kind of guys.
Right.
So I wasn't looking at the villain thing. But when I got that, I really embraced it and got into it. And it was fun to, the villain, dominates a lot of the movie. And then he gets paid back in the end, for
Yeah.
being such a bad guy.
The villain usually brings the most emotion out of the audience member because you hate him. He takes the most emotion. So
When I saw the first screening with an audience, they cheered, they cheered when I meet my demise.
I remember loving it too. I was cheering in the movie
Yeah,
theater
they
itself.
loved it because
Yeah.
the guy was so evil.
That's right. Reindeer Games, Gary. I find that to be kind of a hidden gem. That's you and Ben Affleck, Charlize Theron. And what I like about it is it's an action movie that takes place during the holidays. And in the spirit of that, you have Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, all these action movies taking place during Christmas.
Around
That
Christmas,
intensifies things, right? The emotion in the air of the holidays already, and ooh, somebody's robbing Nakatomi Plaza. So that kind of emotion it really adds, doesn't it, with the holidays and action movies?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was kind of cool because you got this casino heist, right? John Frankenheimer directed that movie, and he wanted me to play the bad guy in the movie. So now I'd done Jimmy Shaker.
That's
and
right.
I'm like, okay, I can play the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was I had worked with Frankenheimer on a movie about the governor of Alabama, George
Yes.
Wallace. And I loved working with John Frankenheimer. So he wanted me to do that, and I jumped at it.
Wow.
I wanted to do it.
You're watching Hollywood and Ivy. We'll be back with more after this. Stick around. In 2011, Gary, you formed the Gary Sinise Foundation, and you have given a total of $194 million to veterans. Talk about how that began and what a wonderful foundation you have created.
Well, thank you. I would say the American people have given it to the Gary Sinise Foundation, and we've been able to pass it on. We've been able to raise a lot of money to do a lot of wonderful things for our veterans and military families. So who would have thought? I mean, I didn't know. I have veterans in my family, on my wife's side of the family, on my side of the family. I got involved with veterans back in the 80s when I was doing Steppenwolf stuff and, through the family members, all this. Then I played Lieutenant Dan. He's a Vietnam veteran. That led me to getting involved with our wounded service members because he's a wounded soldier. And then September 11th, I was just teed up to do more and wanted to help the troops who were deploying to Afghanistan and Iraq. So I just raised my hand, went out there for the USO, started doing a lot of different things, supporting a lot of military charities, trying to raise money for them. Started a band that we would play, for the troops, and USO tours and all of this stuff. And it all kind of became very clear to me around 2009, 10, that I'm so busy with this is becoming so much a part of my life that the next big thing for me to do would be to create my own nonprofit. And having been involved in it for a long time, I had a fairly solid reputation for supporting our troops and, using resources that the American people would give to me to help our veterans and first responders, that I just decided to call it the Gary Sinise Foundation. And we launched publicly in June of 2011, so we just, this past June, celebrated the end of our 10th year.
The houses that you build for the veterans, helping with the quality of life and customizing those, that's the most amazing thing to me about that, Gary, and talk about how you help with housing for veterans.
You have a lot of banged up people, there's a lot of banged up folks. And for everyone who's losing arms and legs and has traumatic brain injuries or severe burns or blindness or, traumatic, post-traumatic stress, whatever it is, their families go through these difficult, periods with them as well. So by providing a smart technology, mortgage-free home that is specifically designed to meet the disabilities and the challenges physically of the wounded service member, that's very special, and it's all supported by thousands and thousands of our fellow citizens who go to our website, GarySiniseFoundation.org, donate to the foundation. Many companies come in and provide services or materials that help us build these houses. Every in-kind donor who provides floors, roofs, plumbing, tile, whatever it is, and they do that for free, that allows us to stretch the cash a lot farther to build these houses. It allows us to get a lot more done. And we've just gave our 75th home away on Veterans Day. Yeah.
Every Memorial Day, and we've heard Joe Mantegna's side of this, as he's an executive producer of the show, you host a celebration with Joe. Talk about how you guys partnered on that and how special it is to work with your dear friend every Memorial Day.
Oh, wonderful. I look forward to Memorial Day every year because of the significance and of that concert, the National Memorial Day concert on PBS. And I got a call from I think it was from Joe back in, I think it was 2005, and they were gonna, he had started doing the concert in 2002. In 2005, and I was doing all this USO tours and taking my band around and, visiting the troops overseas and everything. And I was doing a lot of it with the USO, and they had decided that in that 2005 show, they were gonna feature a moment about the USO. Do a segment kind of highlighting the USO from the Bob Hope days until present day. Mm-hmm. And so they asked me to bring my band and be a part of the USO segment in the 2005 show, which I did. And I had my band over in Europe. We did Germany, the UK, Belgium. We were doing a USO tour in Europe. And we flew right from the end of that tour to Washington, D.C., and now we're performing in front of 200,000 people on the stage in front of the Capitol in Washington. And they asked me to narrate a few few other segments during that show, as well as play with the band. And then the following year, Joe called me and said, hey, why don't you co-host this with me?
Right.
And I went back in 2006, and we've been doing it together ever since.
We'll be back with more on Hollywood and Ivy, where Sunset Boulevard meets Addison and Clark, after this. The Lieutenant Dan Band.
Well, I played as a kid, as I said. Back in high school, I was playing in bands, and I had my first guitar in 4th grade. Played, through all the way through high school, up into my early 20s, and then I got so busy with Steppenwolf, I didn't play for a long time. Picked it up again in the late 90s. Started playing with some guys in Chicago, and then after September 11th, I started focusing in on what can I do for the troops. And I was about to go on my first tour to Iraq in June of 2003. We went into Iraq in March of 2003, and now they were going to take the first big, giant USO tour over to Iraq to entertain the troops and everything. Kid Rock was on that tour, and
Oh, wow.
Leanne Womack and a bunch of actors.
Right.
There were 180 people on a 747 that was donated by Northwest Airlines. They gave us the airplane to take all those people over to Iraq. And I knew I was going to go on that trip, but I called my buddies in Chicago that I play music with, and I said, hey, before I go on the trip, I'm going to come into Chicago, and let's call the USO and have them send over some troops, and we'll buy some pizza, and we'll play some music for the troops. And so in just about a week before I left to go to Iraq, we did this little party, and we invited, some of the troops from Great Lakes Naval Base to come over and hang out with us. And that was my first time playing for the troops. Then I went on this tour, and they didn't ask me if we could play or anything. I mean, they didn't ask for a CD. What, are you guys any good? So they set up a tour, and I wanted a name, and a lot of people didn't know who Gary Sinise was, but they knew who Lieutenant Dan was.
Yeah.
So I said, let's name it after Lieutenant Dan, and that's how the Lieutenant Dan Band got started. We did our first tour in February of 2004 over to Korea. You can see the history of the band at GarySiniseFoundation.org.
It's the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941.
Today, yeah.
Have you visited with a lot of those veterans? Have you been to Pearl Harbor?
Yes, yeah. In fact, I was at the 75th anniversary of the attacks. I was a part of a group where we took about 75 veterans over to Pearl Harbor. My foundation is one of the sponsors of the event. We have about 45 or 50 veterans over there that we're sponsoring right now.
On this event today, happening right now?
Happening right now.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have been there, but I'm here with you today.
I'm so happy. We're happy you're here. It's great to have you. Gary, you never got to meet Harry Carey. Is that a big disappointment?
Like I said, when I go there to do the song, you can't help but think about Harry Carey. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a cool tradition that they started when they, well, who's going to replace Harry singing? And they decided to just have a bunch of guests come in and do it, which gave me the opportunity to get up there in the booth and address the crowd and sing the song and kind of feel what Harry must have felt standing up there singing.
Yeah. Gary Sinise, it's been great having you on Hollywood and Ivy. Had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. Thanks for joining us, and pleasure. We'll see you at Wrigley Field.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody next time on Hollywood and Ivy, where Sunset Boulevard meets Addison and Clark. Thanks for watching. Hollywood and Ivy was filmed live at Universal Studios in Hollywood, California. Brigham Avery's wardrobe was provided by Richie's Suits of Beverly Hills. Richie's Suits, a perfect fit. Catering was provided by Gino's East of Chicago, located in Sherman Oaks, California. Hollywood and Ivy is a presentation of Brigham Avery Productions.